This is my review or my thoughts about Jill Duggar's Counting the Cost, a memoir by her and Derek Dillard and Craig Borlase, which was basically her story about um, disentangling herself from her family and the troubles that came from that. It was a page turner. I just like reading about people's life stories anyway, people's stories with growing up, especially people. I feel like lately I've read several books of people growing up who were homeschooled, and then mostly they were traumatic stories of some sort. I just recently read I'm Glad My Mom Died. I had read Educated. Maybe there was one more too, but I seem to, over the last few years, have delved into this little genre of memoir. So Jill Duggard's book, I was really interested in reading it. I had seen that Shiny Happy People documentary, and I think that there is a lot to learn from people who were homeschooled. Also, lately, I've read a lot of the stories on the homeschool recovery account or group on Reddit. And some of those stories, maybe they're fake, who knows? But there are some themes that come up over and over again, which I think are worth listening to, especially for people like me who weren't homeschooled, but who are homeschooling our children. So, anyway, though, and with Jill Duggard, I mean, I remember years ago, was it 2 decades ago or something? 18 years ago, watching, seeing on the Discovery Channel for the first time I think it was 14 kids and counting. I had one baby or two at the time, and I just remember being so blown away, impressed by this family, just in terms of all the things they could do. Oh wow, their children all play instruments, they could build a house. Look how organized the mom was. Because back then, even just with the babies, I was struggling with just making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And so I had been impressed by the family, and maybe I wasn't critical enough. I watched I think I watched the main documentaries, and then since we didn't have cable TV, I definitely didn't see a lot. I mean, I just didn't keep up too much with the shows, but I did know about the shows. I had actually, when they were free on Amazon, I had enjoyed being able to put that on for my children because it was mostly wholesome when they were free on Amazon. So that's my experience with the family. But I did read the mom's book because I was super interested in how she kept so organized. So that's my background. But I do know that Jill had a lot of issues with her family. So I think I read this book in 2 days with the spare time I had here and there. I really enjoyed it. But I did have some main thoughts that I want to share. First, things that surprised me. Number one was that how unreal reality shows are. And I guess I was a bit trusting because the family, I do think they truly have a core, religious values. I do think when I guess I try to think the best of people. So in my best assessment, I do feel like the parents do think this is some type of ministry where they're sharing with people a certain message and that they do want to honor Christ. So I was truly surprised at some of the things she shared, which to me um, were dishonest. And I understand that I understand that no matter what, if you have cameras in your home, things have to be a little off. I mean, even if it's just, oh, well, you're presenting yourself as your best self. I think I understood that, but I was surprised at some of the concrete details she shared that to me showed that they were dishonest in producing this show and sharing this show. One of them was, I guess, during her engagement, she shared that they had made it like a storyline. She was going to see, I didn't see this episode, but she had gone to see her, Derek, who she was hoping to court, but they were going to meet for the first time in Nepal, and she wanted to stay 2 weeks, but the production team could only stay one, and she didn't want to have that trip end with 1 week. So they compromised and showed a fake goodbye between her and him so that the production team could have their little story. And she cried, and they acted like they were saying goodbye, but then she stayed another week and they had their real goodbye later. And yeah, to me that was so surprising, because what is that other than being dishonest? I mean, I would feel very dishonest doing that. She also mentioned in their first documentary how um, they had shown footage of the family grocery shopping, and again, I think back to where when I was watching this as a viewer, I was just so curious and amazed. But yeah, I guess I was feeling like, oh, I'm seeing how this family really does things. Whereas Jill shared that the TLC team or production company had paid for things like their grocery trip, things like when they ate out, when they were on camera. And so the parents had specifically told the children, hey, instead of buying their usual, which was very simple, like macaroni, I don't know what she shared, but just like noodles, bologna, beans, they shared with the children, hey, we could get whatever we want because it's being paid for by them. So they kind of went crazy for these grocery trips where they bought all these things that they don't normally buy. So on one hand, sure, they really did a shopping trip, but it was not the normal day in the life thing. And that's what, as a viewer, I was thinking I was watching. So yeah, I felt truly like, okay, yeah, I did feel like disappointed, because I guess I just expected a higher degree of reality from reality shows, which I guess the lesson is these shows are absolutely not real, even if, yeah, they're not real. Like, wow. So that was disappointing. And then another takeaway I got from this is just that I guess a good lesson was really learning how to respect your adult children. A big part of Jill's issues with her family and her dad was that she did not get paid for being on this show. She did not get a paycheck, even as she was an adult, and even when she became the one of the main focuses of the spinoff. That her dad still ran things and didn't give her a paycheck, and it was something that she had to fight for and even go through lawyers about to get some type of compensation, which that seemed inappropriate. Like, to me, I think if I had made a empire show out of my family, I would be paying my children, who were in many ways the stars of the show. So I guess, and I try to look at things from both sides. I could kind of see her dad's perspective in terms of understanding that in his mind he has this very patriarchal to the extreme mindset of he can still call the shots for his adult children even when they're outside the home and even when they're married, that he's still, I guess, in the IBLP understanding, he is still their authority. It's really not a leave and cleave mindset, I guess, and I didn't realize that about the IBLP mindset. Um, and so that's his mindset, but obviously his daughter does not subscribe to that. So to me, it was a very painful here. It's painful to hear how much conflict she had with them. And I think, yeah, I just think the lesson in that is just as a parent, I mean, I have strong beliefs, but to really have it sink in that when your children are out of your home, not being, well, yeah, out on their own, that the relationship definitely changes. But however, one thing I do feel like I don't feel like she is seeing is that um, she was very dependent on the family financially. I guess in their back and forths when her and her husband wanted compensation for all those years that she'd been working without getting a check, the dad countered with kind of like an itemized bill or accounting of all the ways they had financially supported Jill. And from the impression I got, this is even as an adult, they were financially supporting Jill. And she publishes the list in her book. Um, I don't know the page exactly, but basically he writes out, apartment rent at 700 something a month for so many years. He puts the total, her car insurance for all these years, her midwife training, I think that was 5,000, a Honda Pilot at 9,000. He kept going on and on. I guess she had a family credit card where she would be able to go to the Goodwill, and a family card for eating out. So there are all these ways, which surprised me because these are things. I mean, the midwife training was, I believe, for sure as an adult, they paid for that. So these things that she had bought, or she had been supported by her parents in all these ways. I believe maybe the healthcare payments were on there, and so that kind of took me by surprise I just don't feel that if I was being supported in that way by my parents at age 23, 24, or whatever, yeah, I think it does get kind of complicated. Like, okay, sure, they didn't pay you a paycheck, but I mean, what? She was just being supported at a level that is, I definitely am not planning to support my adult children at the nowhere near that. My teenagers, when they get their license, we currently are making them pay their own car insurance. So to read that the parents had supported her to such a high degree, it does make it a more complicated situation. And ultimately, at the end of my time reading the book, even though I was fascinated, and here I am talking about it, I do feel like at the end of the day, she shouldn't have written the book. I just, yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of felt that I'm reading a book of somebody, I'm not sure how old she is, late 20s maybe. Or I just feel like, wow, I just think she's young. I don't think she realizes maybe how she might feel as a parent later with children, if when her children grow up, if her child was to write a book that showed her worst moments, that quoted her, in these fights that they had, and then put it out to the public, I just imagine she wouldn't feel, she'd be maybe devastated by that, even if the book is true. I just felt like, wow, I wish she had kept this private. However, I did read it, so maybe that's complicated. But yeah, I just thought, wow, for one day for this relationship to get better or the best it could be, I think the book shouldn't have been put out there. Definitely wouldn't help to resolve that. I do think too she could have written about her challenges being raised in IBLP philosophy and then having to really work out what that means as an adult and how to become a real independent adult and how challenging the IBLP mentality would make that. I think she could have written that kind of book to help people, to share her lessons, what she thinks are faults in the IBLP teaching without getting so personal. So I just feel like, well, maybe later she's going to regret this and you can't really take it back. But that was my feeling about it. Like, oh, this book was probably a mistake. But maybe she doesn't feel like that right now. I'm sure she doesn't. Um, Now, was it a mistake for me to read it? I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe it was too. But I feel like there were some good lessons in that. Again, about how you deal with your grown children as adults when they've rejected certain parts of what you gave them. And my last takeaway from the book was just how it does seem really challenging to have a ministry that you really believe you're doing good in, how easy it is to lose focus and then to have it just go sideways. What came through in the book is just the ways that the show was dishonest. The show also was very, yeah, maybe not respectful of what it did to the children, how the children did become the source of entertainment for people, and how Jill feels like as an adult, her privacy was so easily invaded by others because they saw her as this public figure. And I just feel like there were so many things that were not intended that happened due to this show, and maybe due to the parents not being willing to let go of the show when it was shown to be doing more harm than good, or when it started to contradict what might be the original intent of the show, which again, I'm giving the parents the benefit of the doubt. I think the show was meant to be this, let's share how Jesus has helped our family, let's share all these blessings of giving your womb over to God and all these things. That original intent, once all these issues started coming up, and then the parents started to hold on to the show, and even they were compromising in all these other areas. It's just a sad lesson. I guess I hear it a lot in people who seem to start out really wholehearted. They want their ministry to reflect Christ and God, but then they start compromising to uphold the ministry, and the ministry becomes more important than things like honesty, um, love, respecting other people, humility. So that's just a good sobering lesson that, I mean, it could happen, I think, to anybody who wants to try to do something beyond themselves. Um, and so, yeah, it left me pretty sobered in that regard, just that everyone has to be careful. And again, I'm thinking the best of people. I'm thinking the best of Jill too, and her husband. And I think that's just the best way to go about life, because I know when I've been judged for things that seem to me very harsh, or like my intentions are judged by people when, and they're not right. I don't like that. So I try to be very open-minded towards others, that just to assume really the best of them unless there's just tons of evidence to the contrary. So I'm assuming the best of Jim, Bob, and Michelle, and I'm assuming the best of Jill too. So the book was really fascinating. There's more that I could say about it, but for now, I'll just stop there. And yeah, I think it's totally worth a read. And or, but again, like I said, maybe it's not, because maybe it's just private conflicts that should have been kept private. So yeah, I don't know if I can recommend the book. What do you think about that? When maybe this was stuff we shouldn't have known, perhaps. It also made me really think too about how when I share about the conflicts I'm having with people, and my family, like maybe I shouldn't share too much. Because yeah, when I was reading, I was thinking, oh my goodness, she's throwing her parents under the bus. Like, well, if I'm feeling like that reading about her story, maybe I should be a lot more careful in what I share with other people about whatever conflicts I'm having, because it's so easy to throw others under the bus even though you're really telling your story. So, I guess that's something we could all be careful about, how to share what we've learned, or share things that have really hurt us, because we are looking for healing and maybe the best way to resolve things and move on. But how to be careful not to, I guess, uncover someone else's sins or problems in a way that isn't loving. So that's a delicate thing to do. But yeah, I think probably writing a book about it and sharing it with the world, overall, it isn't going to be a good idea unless it's in a really extreme circumstance. But I will just, that's my impression. I could be wrong. And I just wish the best for that entire family. And I hope that they can, on both sides, I think both sides have a lot to forgive. My hope is that they can forgive each other. And even if their relationship has to be a little more distant, that they could be as loving and respectful as possible, even when they have these conflicts that aren't going to go away, because both couples have some pretty strong beliefs, but I hope for the best for them. And that's my mini book review.